a lot of times Andy Reid's Philadelphia Eagles tenure gets brought into this as a Kyle thing because he didn't win a championship in 13 years. And so the question with Kyle is how long can you go without winning a Super Bowl? If that's the ultimate goal, right? And Jed's words get thrown at him that, hey, you said this about winning championships.
He's pivoted since.
Right, rightfully or smartly. But how long can you go?
We want to be in the mix, guys.
Which, honestly, if I were an owner, it would be about winning championships and trying to win a championship. But I do think you'd understand if you haven't won one in a long time, there is an element of let's just be in the mix. Do we think our coach has a fatal flaw that prevents him from winning the championship? And if so, do we have a road to finding a coach that is better than that guy? But what I just wanted to address the Andy comparison because I've made it before, like Andy Reid, 13 years, blah, blah, blah. And you are you're an expert on this. You worked for Andy Reid in Philadelphia. So Kyle's first 6 years, this is what we've just went through. 531 winning percentage, 2 division championships, 3 postseasons, 3 NFC championship games, 1 Super Bowl loss. Andy's first 6 years, Kyle had a 531 winning percentage. Andy's 666. He was 64-32. 4 division titles in his first 6 years, 5 postseasons, 4 NFC championship games, 1 Super Bowl. They lost it. And I think what gets said a lot is, look at Andy's tenure. That guy went to 4 NFC championship games. Or actually went to 5 NFC championship games and a Super Bowl, and he still got fired. But I don't think that's the right way to look at Andy. Now, you tell me because you were there. I think what happened was Andy got fired because he didn't win a playoff game for the last 4 years he was there. It's not about the first 6 years. It's how it ended at the very end. 4 playoff appearances in his last 8 years. 4 playoff appearances in 8 years. 1 NFC title game. And in the last 4 years, wild card loss, and then missed the playoffs 8-8, missed the playoffs 4-12. And he didn't get fired because he went to 5 NFC championship games and didn't win a Super Bowl. I don't think, but you were there, so what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you have to remember he made Juan Castillo his defensive coordinator. There was some Hail Mary.
When was that? Was that going into
would have been
last year?
Second to last year, yeah. And then Juan got fired the third year, the year he was fired, and Todd Bowles came up, but it was too late. Didn't matter. There were questions had it run its course the previous season. The year that he went 8-8, the year before he was fired, I'm pretty sure that we were 4-8 and won the last 4 games, so there was like some positive momentum.
Okay.
But it was kind of just, sometimes you just needed a change. But this is year 13-14. So Kyle's not even halfway through that yet. And so far his hiring, right, in terms of his defensive coordinator, because like Andy, his success is going to be predicated, a big part of it, on something that he has nothing to do with. Besides, philosophically, Andy and Kyle are very similar. Like, they love blue chip defensive linemen. They have no problem investing resources over there. Like, they don't just they don't hoard all the resources to their side of the ball. If sometimes, honestly, like, they feel they can figure it out, in certain times, in certain positions with guys like, let's upgrade here. Like, no, I love this guy. He's a BYU grad. Or Kyle's like, he's a little white guy. I can make him happen. He's kind of got this Belichick complex to him. But, like, I appreciate that because they understand how important defense is. I would say one major difference is a large percentage of Andy's success in Philly early on. Like, he had Jim Johnson, for I think almost a decade. So he had one defensive coordinator who was kind of viewed as like his Vic Fangio. And it was awesome. He was sweet. He was elite. I mean, he was Sean McDermott. He was creating all these assistant coaches, Ron Rivera, and then he died. It was just, it really, I think, kind of threw them out of course. And Sean McDermott, who, looking back, shouldn't have been fired. But at the time, there was so much pressure because they had been so close. I think Jed is a little different because he hasn't won a Super Bowl. But it just, the Eagles had never won a Super Bowl as a franchise. It's weird. Like, was last year a failure? Yeah, because the way it ended with Purdy, but ultimately, like, a lot of people, if you're just our age, right, there's been a long period of time between those Eddie DeBartolo days and some of those years when Pete Carroll and Matt Leinart, wouldn't leave USC, right, because they didn't want to get drafted and didn't want to coach the 49ers. So I think Andy was almost a a product of his own success. The bar was like, you're right there, but he couldn't quite get over the hump, where it doesn't feel like that here. It just doesn't. And it shouldn't, because let's just say Kyle next year wins 2 games. Let's just say 49ers worst team in the league. And it is ugly. Now, ultimately, it would lead to Caleb Williams or Drake May. It'd feel sweet, but once you got there, but it'd be the ugliest season ever, right? It'd be worse than Tom Sula, because you would just come off the NFC Championship game, not 8-8 or whatever. Like, okay, let's say
I don't know if it'd be worse than Tom Sula, but we can.
It'd be pretty bad as you were going through it, losing every game.
The Tom Sula thing felt so. Part of what made that so bad was like you would whiffed so badly on your head coach. That was the embarrassment of that. Was
I'm just trying to set up a scenario that, like, okay, fire him.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. For who? Like, you see most of these coaches, like Shane Steichen, Gannon, like, just look at the coaches that typically get hired, right? You'd like D'Amico, but he's gone, right? D'Amico and Vrabels, right, are outliers. I mean, most guys stink.
D'Amico hasn't won an NFL game yet.
And listen, everyone likes Sean O'Connell, looks the part, buddies with McVay, won 13 games, got KO'd in the first round at home by the Giants. Kevin O'Connell. And now they're cutting guys, right? Dalvin's gone, Thielen's gone. Like, what if all of a sudden this year he goes 8-9, and then they pivot off Kirk Cousins? Like, the Vikings fans will be like, "Is this guy any good?" It'll happen fast. Brian Daboll, Coach of the Year, 9 wins. It's not like he's Coach of the Year. I'm bullish on the guy, but what if this year he wins? He goes 6-10. A lot of one-score games don't go his way. It's like, are we sure we got Bill Parcells, number 2.0, bald, shorter, fatter version? It changes fast. Like, Kyle, over a 4-year span, has kind of proven to me, like, the fucking guys get his squad ready to win some big games. I've seen a lot with a lot of different quarterbacks.
My ultimate point is, when you compare him to Andy didn't get fired for going to NFC Championship games. Just like Kyle's first 6 years have been.
Andy was just there a lot. Like, I do think the conversation is a lot different at 14 years than it is at 5 or 6.
For sure. But my point is, like, I think people look at the Andy thing and simplify it to Andy got fired because he didn't win a championship. Andy was on the hot seat because he didn't win a championship. But ultimately, at the end, they got fired because they went 4 years without winning a playoff game.
But for as awesome as, like, it's been with Mahomes now, all these 3 Super Bowl appearances, 5 years, 2 Super Bowl wins, he had like a 5-year stretch with Alex where it was just, they were not even Kyle Shanahan. They won, I think, 1 playoff game over the 5 years. Now, they were winning the division or a wild card team all the time, but they were getting bounced by Mariota or Andrew Luck. It just wasn't. But I think Chiefs fans had just known, like, we had just seen Todd Haley at a disaster. Like, this could suck a lot worse, right? So
Would Kyle sign Alex Smith if he was available?
Like that version of Alex?
Yeah.
I think he would like him a lot.
Love him, right?
Yes.
I think it's pretty underrated that Alex was the quarterback of the Chiefs for 5 years. I think that's pretty underrated. I think it feels like it was 3 or 2.
It was a lot longer than people realize. 14, 15, 16. Mahomes was drafted in 17. Maybe it was 4.
No, you're right. It was 13, 14, 15,
13,
16. And then
he got 17, which was his best year of his career.
I know.
When Mahomes redshirted.
And almost loses his leg. Last one, John.
I would say it was a bizarre tenure, because I remember one year they won like 11 or 12 games. This was a 16-game season. It was like, he didn't even throw a touchdown to a wide receiver. It was like, well, their wide receivers aren't that great.
Yeah, it was, what's his name?
They did have Macklin.
No, who was the other guy they had?
Dwayne Bowe.
Who they drafted, Dwayne Bowe. Yeah, that was a pretty incredible stat. That was a Niners-esque stat.
But then they got Kelsey and Tyreek, and his stats, nothing like Mahomes, but were incredible for Alex. 27 touchdowns for Alex Smith. Mahomes, like 50, no problem. Alex wants you, or Andy wants you to throw the ball.
They went from what did we say? 17 was Alex's last. Yeah, so that was no, that's not a good year. That was 16. Sorry, hold on. 17. Alex threw 26 touchdowns, 5 picks. I mean, the 5 picks makes 26 touchdowns feel like 35 touchdowns. And then 26 and 5, and then Mahomes takes over and throws 50.
One thing I wonder,
John, they went from 26 to 50
they lost at home
with the backup.
A pretty devastating game to Mariota. I think Travis Kelce got a concussion, didn't play like the second half. Let's say they win that game. Let's say they win 2 playoff games and are in the AFC Championship game and still end up losing. I assume it was the Patriots. They lose Alex Smith to the Patriots, whatever. Are we sure that they don't just redshirt him twice? You know, part of it was like he had been awesome, but we had got knocked out in the first round. What if they had won some games?
Everything that you say that Brett Veach is, everything Brett Veach has said, but you've talked to him and Andy about how good Andy.
I think the ending to the season was so devastating.
Yeah. What was Alex's contract status? Like, they did trade him. Didn't they trade him for a second and a player swap? Is that what it was?
He was second and one of the Fuller brothers, I think.
That's a pretty good trade.